In the month after the fall of the Berlin Wall, a series of diverging statements by the West German Chancellor Helmut Kohl regarding the acknowledgement of the Oder-Neisse Line as the German-Polish border triggered harsh criticism by politicians in Poland. In public statements, they wondered about what they had to expect from the re-emergence of a big German state in the heart of Europe. As in any other freshly independent state after the fall of communism, a new national identity had to be created in post-communist Poland. This paper focuses on the role of borders in the process of constructing and reaffirming national identities. A case study on the meaning of attached to the Oder-Neisse Line in nation-building practices in the Third Polish Republic tries to contribute to the deepening of a knowledge on the interrelatedness of the concepts national identity, politics of memory, and administrative legacy. First, I will introduce these concepts. Subsequently, some remarks on Poland's history and the German-Polish relations will be presented. The second part of the paper provides the ground for the analysis on the Oder-Neisse Line and national identities in Poland since 1989. For individuals, carefully constructed representations of the past can create a sense of belonging to a group or another large entity. The groups to which individuals feel attached to are an expression of and shape their personal identities. Another key aspect of identity is the relation between the self and the other. Hegel used his basic rule of the process of identity construction on the individual level for his interpretation of the behavior of nation-states as well. In order to legitimize their viewpoints and actions, all political parties construct an interpretation of the past. In parliamentary democracies, the political elite's composition is the most significant reflection of a hierarchy of viewpoints at a certain moment, that is, election day. However, the political elite's interpretation of the past not only reflects a certain mood in the country, it tries to shape all citizens' interpretation of the past as well. It is here that the concept of politics of memory comes to the fore. On top of that, examples from around the world show the potential influence of national memories on foreign and military policy choices. Political turnovers are accompanied by the need to construct a new national identity. The new political leadership hereby has the administrative legacy of the state at its disposal. This is the preserved documentation of the activities of former governments and their administrations and MPs. Because of the arbitrary nature of nation building, I adopt Maria Theodorova's notion of legacy as perception, the articulation and re-articulation of how the entity is thought about at different times by different individuals or groups. Every kind of memory is the result of a continuous dialogue in which past and present are to be found. National memory continuously negotiates between available historical records and current social and political agendas. Politicians are using the method of cherry picking. Useful historical records are embraced, others become victims in the process of active forgetting. Although the opening up of the societies in East Central Europe was a process which gradually emerged during the 1980s, the eventual collapse of communism still caused a feeling of uncertainty among the citizens of these countries about what to expect from the future. The reactivation of national identities in post-communist countries came as no surprise. The nation is replacing the communist state as the main institution, providing people with a sense of stability and togetherness. Borders have a double functioning for political elites. First, they determine what people will be reached by the functioning of the nation-state as an administrative unit. A border second,
Sorry.
Okay, I will do it without it. It's okay. Borders have a double functioning for political elites. First, they determine what people will be reached by the functioning of the nation-state as an administrative unit. About the second advantage for politicians is its usefulness in the creation of a we feeling. Similar to national identities, borders are social constructs. Except for natural borders as rivers and seas, borders are nothing more than arbitrary lines on a map. In recent years, the artificiality of administrative borders is highlighted in the research project Phantom Borders in East and Central Europe, which focuses on the structuring influence of former borders on today's world.
maybe we leave him
Yeah.
to read because otherwise he's
Yeah.
distracted.
Although in this sense the Oder-Neisse Line cannot be defined a phantom border, its continuously altering relevance in Poland after the fall of communism resembles phantom-like characteristics. Poland's past is characterized by the subsequent loss of its sovereignty. After the Second World War, Poland became a satellite state of the Soviet Union. Two topics regarding the formation of and situation in postal Poland are of high importance for this paper's topic. First, the post-war Polish state had, in comparison with interwar Poland, completely different borders. Since the Soviets refused to withdraw from the in 1939 annexed Tretji territories, the so-called Curzon Line became Poland's new eastern border. To compensate the Poles for the lost territories in the east, the Allied powers agreed to shift Poland's western border westwards as well. Former German territories east of the rivers Oder and Civilization or Odra-Nisa became part of post-war Poland. Secondly, as a consequence of the ideological clash between East and West in the Cold War era, it was difficult for the people in the People's Republic of Poland and the Federal Republic of Germany to start the process of overcoming their shared painful past. To legitimize its power position, the Polish United Workers' Party continuously put emphasis on the committed crimes by the Nazis and the Wehrmacht. From the middle of the 1960s onwards, the first small steps in the process of reconciliation between West Germany and Poland were taken. One of the most important components of the Neue Ostpolitik by Willy Brandt and Egon Bahr was the acknowledgement by the FRG of the Oder-Neisse Line as the German-Polish border in 1970. As a consequence, the Oder-Neisse Line lost its high relevance for the bilateral relations between the two states. One can argue that, being one of the symbols of the divide between the Free World and the Eastern Bloc, the inner German border became the most important border in the West German-Polish relations. The first cracks in the Iron Curtain in the second half of the 1980s led to a massive increase in the number of Poles with German predecessors who left Poland. In 1988 and 1989, 319,000 so-called Aussiedler migrated from Poland to the FRG. Despite of the imposition of martial law in Poland in 1981, causing anxiety by referring to the possibility of German aggression was no longer a viable political tool for the Polish communists. In April 1990, 1 month after the border dispute between Bonn and Warsaw had reached its peak, the German Bundespräsident von Weizsäcker stated that the Oder-Neisse Line should get a bridging function. In several ways, this was not the case in post-Cold War Europe for at least a long time. For instance, only in December 2007 Poland's accession to the Schengen area was implemented. Besides that, the fall of communism was not, at least not immediately, the start of the next phase in the process of reconciliation between the Germans and the Poles. In the period between the fall of the Berlin Wall and German reunification in 1990, the Oder-Neisse Line regained prominence in the German-Polish relations. Especially in Poland, the Oder-Neisse Line became a tool to highlight the differences between us and them, the Germans as the much-needed other. However, in the process of nation-building in Poland, the meaning attached to the German-Polish border was characterized by inconsistency. The constructed nature of administrative borders was maximally exploited. Of significant importance for the rapidly deteriorating German-Polish relations was the influx of Aussiedler from Poland into West Germany at the end of the 1980s. Post-war Poland's westward shift and the connective massive expulsions after World War II of ethnic Germans, the Heimatvertriebenen, from former German lands and other places in Central and East European countries had not been forgotten. Kohl was aware of the sensitivities among the German people regarding this subject. This clarifies his objection to please the Poles with the renewed acknowledgement of the Oder-Neisse Line without stressing the importance of fundamental rights for the German minority in Poland. Kohl's stance was met with suspicion and anger in Poland. In a speech in the Polish Parliament in December 1989, Foreign Minister Skubiszewski wondered why the unlimited respect for sovereignty and safety of each state, which was part of Kohl's 10-point plan for overcoming the division of Germany and Europe, would only apply to the two German states and not Poland. Despite Skubiszewski's criticism, Kohl wanted to wait on a decision of an all-German parliament, that is, German reunification, before considering the ratification of a border treaty with Poland. The upcoming elections in the 5 East German states in March 1990 undoubtedly influenced Kohl's stance. The Christian Democrats feared the potential success of the Republican Party, which claimed that it was not possible to speak of a German unification before its borders of 1937 were back in use. In the end, the electoral victory of the East CDU paved the way for the signings of the treaty on the confirmation of the Polish-German border in November 1990 and the German-Polish Treaty of Good Neighborship and Friendly Cooperation in 1991. Warsaw hereby declined Bonn's wish to recognize the dual nationality of the German minority in Poland. Besides that, the proposed use of bilingual local names was rejected. This fierce stance of the Polish government was the first sign that the German-Polish past, and thereby the Oder-Neisse Line, would continue to be misused to strengthen a weak feeling among the Poles. In 1997, after a lot of debates, the Constitution of the Republic of Poland finally came into effect. The administrative legacy of different former Polish states was evaluated, after which some parts were selected to construct a useful representation of Poland's national history. In the preamble of the Constitution, the term Third Republic is used in order to recall the best traditions of the First and Second Republic. On the other hand, the Constitution contains a clear distancing from communist Poland. With Article 23, the Third Republic indefinitely moves away from the collectivization of agriculture in the communist era, and Article 59 refers indirectly to and rejects the oppression of Solidarność in the 1980s. However, this embracement of the best traditions of the First and Second Republic and the rejection of the politics of the Polish United Workers' Party does not match with the borders to which Article 26 attributes. I have in my slides the meaning of Article 26. It's about the protection of the borders by the Polish army. Remarkably enough, opinions about the location of the Polish state in post-communist Poland were more aligned with the preferences of the oppressor Stalin than with those of the Polish government in exile in London during and after World War II. This shows the arbitrariness with which Polish politicians dealt with the past and the country's administrative legacy. On the same time, the state of affairs in the loaded communist Poland and oppositional stances regarding Poland's westward shift by the government in exile were actively rejected and ignored. This adjusting to the current state of affairs, which in the case of the location of post-communist Poland's border is of course justifiable, is something that often lacked in Polish politics after 1989. With respect to the German-Polish relations in the 1990s, the Oder-Neisse Line did not maintain its high relevance after the signing of the treaties by both countries in 1990 and 1991. First, the Westernness and Europeanness of the Third Republic could only be affirmed with an accession to both NATO and the EU. Despite disputes between German and Polish politicians from 1998 until 2002 about the conditions surrounding Poland's EU accession, Germany's Red-Green coalition under Schröder grew into the role of indispensable advocate for an EU enlargement, including Poland. Another reason for the small role of the Oder-Neisse Line in the German-Polish relations during most of the 1990s was the rejection by German intellectuals and the large share of the country's population of the memory politics of the Kohl administration, which focused on German victimhood. However, during Poland's EU accession process, attention for German victimhood gained prominence in public discourse in Germany. In 1999, the Federation of Expellees proposed the formation of a center against expulsions. The German parliament decided in 2002 that this center should come into existence within a European dialogue. This measurement was taken in order to prevent an overdone attention for the case of the Heimatvertriebene, which might upset Germany's neighbors in East Central Europe. Nonetheless, Polish politicians opened verbal attacks on their German colleagues not long after the negotiations on Poland's EU accession had been finished. Schröder, who was in Polish news outlets accused of being the servant of Federation of Expellees President Steinbach, stated after a meeting with Poland's Prime Minister Miller that Berlin was not the right location for the center against expulsions. However, statements of Steinbach were continuously interpreted as an effort to accuse the real victims of Poland's westward shift, the Polish people, of crimes. This narrative fitted perfectly in the Polish political elite's image of the country's past, a past characterized by victimhood and resistance. A declaration by the Polish Parliament, which was adopted in September 2004, can be interpreted as an example of the willingness to fight back. The government was encouraged to take the initiative for renewed reparation claims regarding Poland's destruction by the Nazis. Although the Stadtbrücke of the Oder River, which connects the German city Frankfurt an der Oder and the Polish town Police, was a prominent location during the celebrations of Poland's EU accession in 2004, in the following years, Germany's and Poland's EU politics differed greatly. Poland fought tooth and nail to prevent a further delegation of competences to the supranational level. After the parliamentary elections in September 2005 and the presidential elections 1 month later, which were both won by law and justice of the Kaczynski brothers, the Polish us versus them rhetorics reached its peak. It is important to stress that, even though Germany remained a popular opponent in the period that law and justice dominated Poland's politics, both Russia and the entire Western Europe were verbally attacked. As law and justice's electoral defeat in the parliamentary elections of October 2007 indicate, the Kaczynski brothers had overplayed their hand with a provocative foreign policy and rhetorics. In the following years, the Oder-Neisse Line no longer occupied center stage in Polish politics and public discourse. The governments, dominated by civic platform, had a Polish-German pioneering role in Europe in mind. New electoral success for law and justice in 2015 brought about the re-emergence of conflict-oriented foreign policy by Warsaw. Once more, the Oder-Neisse Line is a big importance in Polish public discourse. This time, the presumed threat from Germany is not formed by ex-belly organizations, but by refugees who massively flew to Germany before and after Chancellor Merkel's well-known Wirtschaftendas statement. According to Law and Justice Chairman Jarosław Kaczynski, the refugees are forming a health threat to Europe. The cooperation between Law and Justice and Hungary's Prime Minister Orbán is focused on the maintenance of national sovereignty. There is no free Europe without nation-states, said Orbán recently with the Polish President Duda at his side. The Sovietization for which he warned, that is, a concentration of power in Brussels, which limits the legislative capacities of national governments, is Europe quite seen as a threat. However, the fact that Eurosceptic parties were able to secure a majority of seats only in former communist countries implies that although the Iron Curtain has lost its role as limiter of the free movement of persons and goods, differences between EU members with and without a communist past still exist. Memories of times in which Moscow decided what happened are emphasized, while cross-border cooperation is only seen as beneficial in spheres of trade and security. I will now move to some conclusionary remarks. The analysis on the meaning attached to the Oder-Neisse Line in the process of constructing and maintaining a national identity in the Third Polish Republic has shown that not only former borders can have phantom-like characteristics. Although the Oder-Neisse border cannot be labeled a phantom border since it's still in use, it sometimes disappears from public discourse to make a comeback when politicians who focus on the maintenance of Poland's sovereignty use it as a dividing line between us, the Poles, and them, the Germans, the traditional EU states, Europhiles, inter alia. As the analysis has shown, the other at the wrong side of the Oder-Neisse Line is not a lost entity. Both Heimatvertriebene and Syrian refugees, and both Berlin and Brussels, have been or are perceived as a threat to the Polish people. Considering the constructed nature of borders, they are highly useful tools in this by arbitrariness characterized process of nation building. The case of the memory politics in Poland, a country with a legacy of a continuous struggle to regain or maintain a position on the European map, shows that this constructedness of borders is embraced by the political elite. Crucial aspects of the politics of the mostly much praised anti-communist government in exile are as easily put aside as innocent Syrian refugees are accused of forming a threat to the Poles. Dealing with a rich administrative legacy and constructed borders gives politicians the means to combine them and to use the result in narratives which focus focus on the protection of the chosen people. Polish politicians have demonstrated both the potential and danger of these practices. Thank you.